Honestly, I never thought that a discussion that came from us guys talking about babes on an old series would ever turn into inspiration for something that I'd want to talk about on a podcast. Like, that was not the goal, but here I am busy preparing myself to talk about Superman and how, Superman today would have been particularly different. But hey, what better way to realize that we have a culture shift in terms of our values and what we hold dear as a society than a look at a series from back in the day and an understanding as to why it is they used to do some of the things they used to do there. But before I can give a proper breakdown and give a pretty good explanation as to how it is I came to all of this, where am I, man, as I should have started with an intro. So, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is Denver B. This is one of the shorter, less edity episodes that I usually like to release whenever I'm on break, just so that, I can occupy the space and time where I am deciding what it is that I'm going to be doing from one season to the next. And like I said, it is usually a shorter episode, less edity, no instrumentals. Now, a couple of days ago, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine. So us guys were busy talking about the old series Smallville, and we were busy talking about, just the babes there. And it was just regular guy banter that wasn't really meant to amount to much, and we were busy talking about who the finest babe was and how Lana Lang was fire, but she wasn't the most fire babe on Smallville and shit. And as we're busy talking about that, the whole talk of, well, Clark should have at least clapped Chloe's cheeks or some shit. This babe wanted Clark for a while, and, she at least deserved to get something from the man. Like, yes, he's Superman. Yes, maybe his strokes might be some of the most superior strokes on planet Earth. But hey, when you kind of think about it, like, this guy should have at least let her get some. And I actually even forgot to give a bit of a disclaimer. Most of this episode is just going to revolve around me talking about Smallville, although I won't be going into the much later seasons. I'll actually try and focus on most of the earlier to the mid ones, because I think that's where most people were watching Smallville. But all in all, it is mostly going to be about Smallville. Now, my friend and I were busy just talking about stuff like this, and it was just pure banter. And for a second, when I was busy thinking about how comes Clark actually didn't have a thing with Chloe, it actually did start to occur to me that us guys were probably thinking about this entire thing a little bit wrong. Because they did actually get intimate, it's just that they didn't shag. And, if you want to know that I'm a bit of a nerd for this kind of thing, it was the episode where Pete and Chloe had some parasite inside of them, and Clark got, a dose of red kryptonite, which made them, like super wild and shit. But anyways, that's sort of besides the point. Now, as we're busy talking about it, my homie is like, yo, Clark was a proper Chad, man. And this guy was definitely bagging babes. But then, as I was busy thinking about how comes these guys, yes, they did get intimate, but they didn't shag, but why didn't they shag? It kind of reminded me of the fact that they were in a time, actually, the entire series was shot at a time where shagging wasn't something that was being done freely, especially by younger folk. Yes, if you are grown up like Lex Luthor and shit, then you could definitely bag a couple of babes and you'd find some of them in bed and some of them would get pregnant. Insert Lana there. But when you kind of think about it, people during that time used to consider sex to be particularly important, if not sacred. And you realize that when you look at the content from back then, because a lot of content is usually a mimicry of society at that time. And as me and my homie were busy talking about how Clark, must have been a Chad for his time, we actually kind of started talking about how if Smallville was shot this year, if it was shot in the late 2010s, if it was shot in the early 2020s, as we are right now, it would be a completely different series and the cast would be doing much wilder shit. And because it was classified as a drama, it would be this web of just very, very messy relationships with people banging other people almost in a near senseless manner, like a lot of the series today. Because you think about it, Clark by like season 5 would have banged at least 5 women, because you'd have Lana there, you would have Chloe there, you'd have the chick that used to teleport called Alicia there, you'd have at least a couple of babes that had some version of pheromone type powers there. And this is by like season 5. So like dude would have clapped a bunch of different chicks before then. And granted, yes, he did still bang Lorna, and like that's something that, anyone who's watched the series, I think all the way till like season 4, season 5 knows. But, like the guy would have had a proper body count by then. Of course, you look at guys like Lex Luthor, he also had a body count of his own. You look at some of the babes as well, they'd have been banging around. Guys like Pete would have been bagging a lot of different babes, because if I remember correctly, Pete would have a girlfriend, but Pete would almost always talk about certain babes here and there and certain other people. So dude might have clapped a couple of cheeks, but he'd probably want to bang Chloe, but Chloe wouldn't let him get some, save for the moments where Clark would be feeling bad as he's busy professing his love for Lana, but Lana isn't available for him, and she's busy trying to show herself there, and at the same time it's like she's not being recognized by Clark Kent. So she'll go and get some pity dick from Pete. Then you'd find Lana being the understanding girlfriend, then she'd have a bit of a hoe phase, then she dates the older guy, and then there's almost like some pedophilia shit that's happening that no one wants to talk about. But at the same time, it's like she occasionally hoes around with Clark or some other dude or some shit. And it would be this wild web of just teenagers screwing around, and that would be by like season 5. But then when you go to the other seasons as well, you realize the amount of hoeing around that could have also happened. Like, Lois would have been for the streets, or for the skies, or for the superhero streets or some shit, because she'd have shagged Aquaman, she already shagged Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, she'd have done Superman in like season 10 when she was in Egypt, she'd have clapped Hawkman as well. Like, I'm thinking about it, like, there's a pretty good chance that it would have been this wild web of people who have shagged everyone in their friend groups, and you do not even know how to distinguish who's good from who's bad. Also, Clark Kent would have been a fairly nice nerd at first, but he'd be bagging babes on the side, and Lana might have been interested in him, but not admit it, but call him a piece of shit, but still want dick from him, because Clark Kent can pull a babe or two here and there, and he's like one of those silent killers that you do not know if he bags babes, but this guy will most definitely bag quite a number of babes. And he'd also occasionally kill his villains, so he wouldn't be much of a hero, he'd be more of an anti-hero, but he'd still say that he's fighting for the good of people. Like, if we were to shoot Smallville in this day and age, that's what I foresee it becoming. Because you look at what people are right now, you look at how a lot of people behave right now, and it is very, very reminiscent of everything that I've just talked about. There's people that are shagging within friend groups. Different friends are doing it with different people. Mara best friends aren't liking each other because, the best friend ended up banging the boyfriend or some shit, or the both of them were interested in the same guy. So this guy's dating this chick, but he's occasionally banging the sister or the best friend, or even both the sister and the best friend and the cousin. And you hear things like this and you see it happen, you see the fighting, you see the web of deceit and the web of drama that usually happens, and it's just messy. And for some reason, people aren't comfortable with being good. No one wants to be the nice guy. Everyone wants to have a hint of bad on them, because a hint of bad makes them more interesting as people, and it allows them to have fun, but they can say that they have morals even though they do bad shit, because they understand that their bad has a line that they won't cross. So they're bad, but to a point. So for the most part, they're good, but they have a little bit of bad on them, which allows them to have fun, and they can be fun people. And you think about it, like, I kind of miss the old days. I kind of miss the days of Smallville and, people being simple, and most of the drama just coming from this anticipation that, will they get together? Are they going to do it together? These two people are interested in each other. How is the story going to progress? And granted, it's not like life is a series and real life is going to be about setting up certain plot points and like completing certain plot holes and ensuring that there aren't any plot holes left. But when you kind of think about it, stuff was a lot simpler back then. And during those times, people weren't having as much sex, or even though they were having as much, it wasn't as rampant with that many people. And people had a certain level of restraint. And to be honest, like, you kind of have to miss those times where stuff was simpler, where delayed gratification was a thing that people wanted. People weren't looking at it as, you buying a used car for new car prices. People weren't looking at, how do I get back at people by sleeping with multiple other people? People weren't looking at infidelity as this thing that you aspire to do in some situations. People thought of relationships and being together in a much simpler, nicer way. Guys felt good because they were good guys. Being a nice guy wasn't a bad thing. It was just a case of, it's okay for you to be a nice guy. You'll just find the babe that actually wants to be with you for you. You don't have to turn into this bad person, this bully, or this piece of shit, or this asshole. Like, those were the simpler times. And when I think about those times, I actually kind of miss it in that, like, the good guy aesthetic is considered boring now, and it's mostly gone for a lot of people. There's not that many guys that want to be a good guy. There's not that many women that want to be a good girl, because it's like the moment you choose to be a good guy, the moment you choose to be a good girl, it's like that's when now you turn yourself into a doormat and people walk all over you and people get to treat you like shit and all. And that's probably one of the saddest parts about being in the dating market today. Being, a young person that's trying to, create some sort of a partnership with people today, and you're open to it. Like, people are all about trying to get to the goal a lot faster. People are all about trying to get rid of red flags, but being a red flag themselves to some degree. People are trying to find the easiest, fastest way to get to the goal. And it's like everyone is just in it for themselves and not in it for the sake of actually creating a good bond with a good person. And it's a bit sad. It's sad. Yes, I know it's a life that we made, and all of this is because of the decisions that were out there, blah, blah. And of course, time has progressed, and maybe the people who are used to watching stuff in the 80s think that about the 2000s during that time. But when you kind of think about it right now, there's a lot of stuff that's out of hand. There's a lot of things that are properly out of control, and you see it in our series. I love watching the series Power, and you see the kind of webs of deceit, the kind of drama that's there, the amount of fucking around, and honestly, it's wild. It is incredibly wild. And it does kind of make me question whether, the good guy is ever going to come back, or whether the good bad guy is what's there to stay. Because nowadays, you can't be a hero because you're either going to be a simp or you're going to be a doormat. So you have to be an anti-hero where you're this good guy, but you have this bad side. And for the most part, people should see the bad side so that you can seem like this interesting, rebellious dude, but be discovered to be this really good guy underneath so that someone wants to, end up staying with you or some shit, or something close to that. Either way, it's like people have prioritized the idea of being the best mix of both, which is more good, less bad, as opposed to being just good or just bad, which is considered undesirable on either end, even the good one. So you kind of have to ask, is the good guy going to come back? Is the good guy going to win? Or do we just have to settle for the anti-hero? Because that's what we're being fed, and that's what's being pushed to everyone. And you'll hear women busy talking about how they want a good guy, but at the same time, it's like they don't want this really nice dude because he's going to be boring, or they want a guy that treats them well and does ABCD that a good guy is supposed to do, but have a little bit of bad in them. And you can't help but wonder if this is a matter of the media influencing them, or if this is reality as it is right now, or if it's a fact of both happening at the same time. Either way, a lot of women's desires have gone past the good guy towards the anti-hero, even though they say they want the good guy, and that is definitely something that you have to wonder where it's coming from. And to kind of conclude all of this, since I'm more or less out of time, maybe women's desires have changed because of the media, and maybe we need to change that. But considering that right now the anti-hero, the good bad guy, or the bad good guy is what's in season, it's what's in fashion, I don't know if we're going to be changing that anytime soon. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe like a decade or some shit, but we'll need to at least try and adjust our content again so that we can bring back stuff like delayed gratification and maybe a hell of a lot less sex. Although, then again, I could be wrong about this, just the same way I'm wrong about a lot of other things, so I want your thoughts on it. The link is in the description and the DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. And on X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.